All right, everyone, welcome to week 3. It's Wednesday night. We're going to discuss. The first thing I want to talk about tonight is a big thing. We're talking about the final project. So remember, there's a final project or a final exam. The final exam is 180 questions. 180 questions? No, 180 minutes. It's not 180 questions. That was terrifying for a second. Sorry. It's 100 minutes. You get to take it twice. It's a lot of questions. If you want to take that, God bless you, take that. If you prefer to do the final project, here's what the final project is. Let me share my screen here. I share my screen. Okay. The final project is, there's a lot to do. There's quite a bit on it. So I'm going to go through it, what it is. And then I'm going to go through, I think I'm going to start going through what the papers are about, because there was a lot of questions on the papers the last couple of weeks. And then we're going to go through the, then I'll answer any questions you have, and then I'll go through the exercise with the where clauses, because that's, I kind of covered that last week, how the where clauses work. So, all right. So the final project, where is it? Right here. Nope, that is it. That's not there. Where's my final project? Boop, boop. That's not it. I lost the final project. That's not good. Let me open this here. I must have closed it by accident. Okay, and go here. Okay. This course is database administration and design, and there really is no design aspect to this class within the normal curriculum. We talk about how to design things, we talk about how to do things, but we don't actually give you an assignment. So we created a final project, and the final project is where you have the opportunity to completely design a database and an application from the ground up. It doesn't have to work. You don't have to code it. It's got to be, it's completely theoretical. You do have to create the database. We're gonna talk about that. So basically, you kind of think of like, you know, you have an idea of like, this app should have always existed. Like, for example, and if I had capitalized on this idea, I would have made $1 billion by now. When I first started learning about databases and I started doing these things, I thought to myself, how cool would it be if there was like a tablet at a table in a restaurant where you could place your order from and pay, because the waiters and waitresses, they do their jobs, but sometimes they're a little too slow for me, right? And I would go to Chili's and I would go to Fry's. I had this idea, so I kind of designed it out. I said, okay, what would the database be like? So always start with the database, because that's the heart of everything, right? So I need to know who the servers were. I need to know who the customers were. I need to know what the menu was. And I started drawing out the tables, right, and how they connected. And then I said, okay, what the front end is supposed to be. So that's kind of what you need to do with this project. You kind of say, what would be a good application that I could make? In the past semesters, I've had students like do a scheduling app for doctors. I've had some students like they wanted to open up some kind of retail store, so they did a database and front end for that. So, you know, maybe there's an application that you use that you think is stupid and want to make better. Whatever it is, whatever you want to do, that's what that is. You got to come up with an idea for it.
A quick question on that.
Sure.
My brother works at as a school bus driver.
Sure.
And they assign seats in the buses.
Wow.
Student, yeah, I know it's totally different from my childhood. But so he wants an app to where he can rearrange or assign seats as students show up or don't show up.
Sure.
And basically adjust it on the fly, because they use company iPhones to keep track of everything.
Sure.
Would a database involved in that be okay? A real world application?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would make it larger than that. I would make it for the entire school district.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. That'd be something.
That's actually what he wants. He wants a company-wide app that all the drivers can use.
You absolutely could do that. And as many, I've told many students in the past, if you get on bug on this and start doing it and you perfect it, present it to the school district and sell it to them, because that's how you make $1 million. And remember your teacher who helped you on the way.
You will definitely get a mention.
Yes. So okay, so that's the first thing. You come up with an idea. So the next thing you need to do is come up with a backend database. So let's play with your idea, Michael, of the school bus app. Okay, so you need to have a minimum of 12 tables in this presentation. So let's kind of riff on this. So let's see, we got a school bus app. So what would we need tables on? We need like a table. Let me bring out my Excel spreadsheet here, because you know that's how I work best. And like I said, this is something I'll talk about through the course of the semester, because these are due on the end of week 12. And then at like it's around week 9 or 10, Wednesday nights will be just dedicated to talking to people about their projects. So let's just take a really high level here of this. So let's see. So we need 12 tables. So we definitely need a table for drivers. Okay. We need a table for buses. We need a table for schools. We need a table for students. We need a table for special needs, because some students may have special needs. What else do we need a table for?
Possibly administrators, because it's something that should be able to be handled both by drivers and by managers as well.
Employees. And that's a good point. So we need an employees table. And then we would need a, I'm gonna call it a jobs table. Because even so last week we were talking about the normalization of databases, and we don't want things in tables. The first level of normalization is don't have something in a table that doesn't directly go to what's in that table. So yes, someone's job is connected to an employee. However, that is a transient thing. So you might be a bus driver today, you might be a supervisor tomorrow, you might be, looking for a new job on Friday. So that we don't want that. That's not a direct connection. So we want a different connection. Also, did we talk about one-to-one and one-to-many relationships last week?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
That sounds familiar.
So in databases, tables have to have one-to-one relationships. Okay. So if I have, let me just sidebar into a different thing. So we'll do author. Let's do just a quick bookstore. Authors, books, publishers. Right. Okay. So, boy, that spelling is. Okay. Publishers. So if we're comparing authors to books, right? Does one book have one author? Or can one book have many authors? So that's not,
Maybe it can have more than one.
right. So that's not a one-to-one relationship. So we actually will have so we couldn't put an author's name in the books table because there's more than one. And we couldn't put a book name in the author's table because obviously one author writes many books, so they're not much of an author, right? So we'd have to create an extra table called like book authors.
So, okay, this is actually leading to my question. So
Sure.
yeah, so these many to many creates a new table. So
Right.
does that new table count as one of the 12 tables needed?
It does.
Oh, heck yeah.
It does. And here's a funny thing. I've yet to see this. We've been doing this final project for 4 semesters now. I've yet to see, when you really get into the grid of this, you will end up with like 30 to 50 tables easy. So you've got to dial yourself back to the 12. Because when you start getting to the meat of it, you're like, oh wait, I need this table, I need this table, I need this table. You get a little table crazy, right? So book author, so you gotta have book, one author, and the reason we have these tables is because one author might be able to have many books, but in this table here, one author will pair with one book. And this is a one-to-one relationship here. This is one-to-one and this is one-to-one. Or sorry, this is one-to-many and this is one-to-many. So I can have one here, many here, one here, many here, and that's not a problem.
Would you basically call that like a many to many, because then the middle table creates both? No.
Many to many if I do these. If one author is many books and many books has many authors. These two tables have a many to many relationship. Let me show you here. So author ID and then author name. Let me explain here. Okay, so 1 Yates, 2 Poe, 3 Lovecraft. Okay. Anyone here ever read Lovecraft?
I know of Lovecraft, but it's not my bag.
My husband tries to get me to read it.
It's the dude. I love Lovecraft because he's like Edgar Allan Poe like
On steroids.
to the nth degree. I actually did reports on him in high school. He's a traumatized man. Anyway,
I
so
don't
book,
doubt that.
he was terribly traumatized. His mother wanted a girl and dressed him like a girl until he was
Oh,
15
dear
years
God.
old. Okay. Totally missed. Anyone who makes a race of ancient gods that look like squid faces, it's just, okay. Book ID. And then book name, right? So we got book 1. I'm just gonna call it XXX for because I'm book 2, YYY. And book 3 is easy. Okay. So now our book author table, I'm just call it BA here, is only gonna have 2 columns in it. It'll have author ID and we'll have book ID. Okay. So here we're gonna do 1 is author 1 is book to 3, 2 is to 1, and 3 is to 2. Okay. So that's just saying I'm just going this way, right? Whoever was the author is that book, right? And let's say book 4, book 5, okay. And maybe book 4 was written by author 2 wrote book 4, but also author 3 wrote book 4 as well. And then book 5 was a compilation. It was a compilation for all the authors. Everyone had a story in there, right? So now, if I tried to do these tables together, there'd be like Yates would show up and like it'd be many to many. Okay, so we can't have that relationship here. Okay, so we need to have I call them bridge tables. So here, 1 author ID pairs with 1 book, and that's it. In each row, 1 author ID will have many tables, but in that 1 row, there's only 1 of them, right? Even though this appears here, here, and here, it's still 1 to many, and this is 1 to many. Does that make sense? Okay, and as you go through here, you will see these tables come up all over the place. Okay, so back to here. So employees, we got buses, we got schools, students, special needs, jobs, and that's 6 tables right there. So you start there, and then you say, okay, when you start designing tables, you say, what do I need to know about my employees? So employees. So we need to know their name. Well, every table starts with an ID, right? And then we need to know their name, last name, name, middle name, first name, address, city, state,
Phone number, definitely.
zip, phone number, birthday. I always thought it was odd. It's against hiring laws to ask someone their age, but you can totally ask them their birthday. So I don't know. So if we start putting stuff here, like we wouldn't put job here. Okay, we wouldn't put job ID here because 1 employee might have multiple jobs or job code designations, right? You might be a driver, but you must be a supervisor, right? You might be a teacher, but you might also be like a drama coach, So 1 person might have multiple jobs. So you wouldn't put the job ID there. That wouldn't work. Here's a good one. Classroom. Email. Oh yeah, email. Okay. So we're gonna stick this only to bus drivers. So would we put bus ID here? Like what bus they drove?
Not necessarily, because they can swap buses
Yep.
according to availability or just first come, first serve.
Right. So we
So
need.
shouldn't you have not any IDs? Like there's only 1 primary key, right? So you have the employee ID through all of these. And then like there would be a joint table with 2 primary keys together if you have like your
So
bridge table.
okay. So here, like obviously in this one, this is the primary key, right? And this one, this is the primary key, right? So notice I didn't do a book author's ID here. And that was on purpose. So the thing about primary IDs, and this kind of takes us off in different conversation, but the thing about primary IDs is it can be, this might be incorrect for MySQL, but generally speaking, a primary key constraint can be up to 3 columns. So in this table, this is the primary key.
Wow. I thought it was
Surprise!
just one little cell. Okay.
No. In database, you can have multiple tables because now a primary key requires that this be unique. So there can never be another 3. There can be another 5. But when you do this, right, there can never be a 1, 3. There can never be another 2, 1. There can never be another 3, 2. This has to be unique, which is just as good as if I did a book ID here, a book author's ID. This works just as well, and it saves you a column. Because remember, and the other thing remember databases, and this might be the only thing we talk about tonight, which I'm totally fine with. The thing about databases is every row, every cell represents storage on your drive. The more rows, the more cells, the more disk space you take up. So you want to be, and you might think that like the number 1 doesn't take up a lot of space, but the number 1 takes up 8 bits, right? And when we, at some point in time, we'll talk. I have a video that I'll post. I'll try to remember to do it this week about data types and how much space they take up per cell. It's pretty amazing when you think about it, how much space it takes up per one cell. Okay. So here, now, so normally, so we wouldn't put like bus ID here, right? But what if we did like one called employment status? And that's like full-time, part-time, you know, whatever, right? So here, we would have an employment status ID. Because you can only have one employment status. You can't be part-time and full-time, you know? So
Then there still is also going to be like a join table with where
No.
you can look at that, right? Like,
well, so there'll be a table. So what there'll be is, so there's another thing about normalization we're talking about here in a second. So we'd have a table called employment status, and then there would be like employment status ID and status and information about that, right? But that would be a one-to-one relationship because one employee would only have one employment status. Okay, so now we totally could just put the employment status here and not do the whole ID thing with a different table, right? So why do you think we would make a whole different table and just put the ID here?
I was thinking, so it's not redundant, but I don't know.
Well, that's one of the reasons why. It's one of the reasons why. Yeah.
I would think that in creating another table that assigns buses, you would have the employment ID and then a bus ID.
Okay, well, let's stick with it. We'll get there in a second. Let's stick with this employee status table right now.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So we make an employee status table, which has employee status ID and the status and maybe a quick description about it, what it is, blah, 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 right? So why wouldn't we just put the employee status in the employee table? Why would we use an ID? So if you've noticed, as I've been typing tonight, I've been making a lot of mistakes. I'm not a very good typist. Okay. So sometimes when you're creating these tables, you've got to think about what is this going to, you know, how are people going to input this data into my application? So we're going to hire Bob, who's a data entry professional, to input 150 employees, right? So we've got a choice. We can give Bob a form that there's a text box where he's got to type their employee status in. And odds are Bob's going to spell full-time differently 8 or 9 different times, you know? And then when we do a search on employee statuses, we got all across the board. We're looking for full-time employees. We can't find one because he never spelled full-time right one time. Or we thought it was full-time and he thought it was one word. So we never find it, right? So if you think of the front end input of these things, when we want people to input this information, we want to give them a form where there's a drop-down box and they choose from the drop-down box. The drop-down box would be populated by these tables. So when Bob's putting the information in, he picks the drop down box, he chooses that, and when you hit the submit button, the front end gets the ID from that table and puts it into the employees table. This also, and what you're talking about, consistency or redundancy, right? So we don't want Bob inventing statuses. Okay, so we want Bob's like, well, he's not full-time, he's not part-time, he's most time. We've made a new status, most time. Bob, we don't really trust him, right? So we want to make sure that the employee statuses are the only ones that we've prescribed. These are it. You can't choose anything else, right? So that's another part of normalization is controlling the end user so they don't get super creative and do weird things, right? Okay. So that's why this would be, so we would have an employee status table, but we can go ahead and put the employee status table to ID in the employees table because they've only ever have one status. Now, to your point about buses, we'd absolutely have a bus table with, like bus ID, bus name, maybe they give them names, I don't know. Or maybe or license plate number, that's probably a better one. License plate number, number of seats, any number of things like mileage, year bought, things like that, anything about the bus. But we'd have to have a separate table, who drives what bus. And that may either be something that's preset, right? Or it might be something that's assigned daily. Maybe, who knows, maybe like, you have to change the bus route. There might be a page in our application that's like, okay, Tommy is subbing for George, and he's going to drive, and so we got to put in there what bus he drove that day, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So there might have to be something like that because we want to know who drove what bus what day. So there might be a dynamic thing, but then, with the buses, we need to know the seats. So we'll have like one of the things in the bus is how many seats there are, and then we've got to figure out. And this is gonna be interesting. If you follow it, don't feel required to do it this way. Then you have to figure out the big thing that you said is how do we assign the students to a seat in this?
Yeah, that's the primary function
Yeah.
he is interested in for himself.
So how would that database look?
I would think that you would get the list of the students that are on your route, as well as either a diagram or just a numbered list of how many seats you have, and then you would decide where those students would go.
Right. But I'm saying, like, so what would the tables that contain that? Because this is very much, and if I were designing this for real and I was a professional, what I would do is I'd find someone who did this for airplanes, because airplanes are all assigned seats.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that.
So you're not, so the thing, the truth about anything you want to build is someone out there has done it. You just have to repurpose it for what you want to do.
That was actually
Right.
one of my thoughts. I was like, well, crap, I'm not coming up with anything original.
Very few. I mean, look at the progression of social media. The first thing was MySpace, right? What was the next big thing? Facebook, which was just a little amped up MySpace, right? And then Instagram, which is a little amped up, and then YouTube, and then so there's no original ideas anymore. It's just repurposing old ideas for a specific venue. I can't think of an original idea that's happened in the last 10 years that wasn't launched off of something else, right?
Honestly. It's the same in the movie industry.
Mhm.
There's no original ideas.
What's that? So there's only like 10 plots.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, there's
Something
10
Sometimes
plots.
like
there's
that.
really good ones.
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes.
It's all about, it's the same plot. They just presented it in a better way than other people did.
Oh, yeah.
Everything boils down to the same 10 plots. So this is kind of what you do. This is the first part of the project. You design the ERD, the entity relationship diagram, right? The tables, what's in the tables, how the tables connect to each other, and you kind of go from there. You have to have a minimum of 12 tables. If you're doing it, if you picked a really good topic and something that's really meaty, you'll end up having more than 12 tables. If you design an ERD that's got 50, 60 tables, awesome. The next step, I wouldn't follow all 60 tables. Okay. So once you've designed your tables, once you've designed your ERD, the next step is to create a script that creates the database. and all the tables, right? And then you need to populate the tables with data.
Wait, pause.
Sure.
Isn't that like, can you just push like forward engineer or whatever and it makes it?
Yes, if you design it, there's ERDs that you can use, ERD constructors that you design in there. If you, there's a button you can push. I don't care how you do it. I just need to see the scripts. You know, so if you do the ERD designer and you draw it out and you hit the button that says write scripts and it writes the scripts for you, that's awesome. I do suggest that you proofread the test scripts and make sure they're right and run them to make sure they actually run, because when you submit them to me, what I'm gonna do is you're gonna send me a bunch of scripts and I'm just gonna run them and see if they work. Okay.
Okay.
That's really legitimate. Dude. You send me the tables, I run it. If it works, awesome. Next, you've got to write information that they're called CRUD operations, and it's a really, really tragic term. It's create, update, delete. I forget what the R stands for, but it's create, something, update, delete. So I need
You have it
to
on there. It says read.
Oh, read, yeah. Oh, there. Oh, look, that's right there. I just always get caught up in actually calling it CRUD. But yeah. So create, read, update, delete. So you're gonna create the tables, but you also create the data in there. So you gotta like give me like 12 students and 12 bus drivers and 12 buses and populate those tables. Because the next thing you gotta do is write test cases for your SQL, for your test cases for your database. So like, I need to know every student that was on bus 12 on September 4th. Okay. I need to know everyone who's the last person who drove bus 16. I need to know what buses are up for their 100,000 mile checkups. I need to know, what bus has any damage. When's the last time? So you kind of think these are these are questions you would ask to get the data out, right? Things that the application would want to use. I mean, simply put, I need to see every student on bus 16 and what seat there. I need a seating chart for bus 16, right? So you've got to design the tables, you've got to write the queries, you've got to provide me the queries to create the tables, you've got to populate the tables with data, and you need to write test case files using the scripts. Okay. And then, and I make this one optional because we're database engineers. We're not front end people. If you want to, and you can get it done, give me a mock-up what the front end would look like. Like, show me what you'd envision. Like, I don't do pretty. I am not good at pretty. I tried being a programmer. I am great at functional.
It's actually, it's funny because web development is what I'm going for.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, then you do the pretty.
Yeah, one of the reasons I'm taking this class is because I've done some front end and I want to see how I like doing the back end instead. Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to. I prefer back end work. I prefer designing databases. It's more in my forte. I like watching the data flows, and it's very artistic. It's almost like watching Bob Ross paint sometimes for me. Happy little tables. So if you're of the mind, I want to do a mock-up of what the UI looks like, more power to you. Then you create a PowerPoint presentation that explains everything, or you can just do a video and like talk me through it, whichever is better for you. Some students go PowerPoint, some people, I don't care which way. Either works for me. So that's the final project. It's a lot of work, yes. Is it easier to take the final exam? Probably. But this is way more fun.
I think this, so honestly, I think I explained to you before that this is my first dive into databases at all. I didn't take a 100 class. And so I think honestly doing this assignment will help me to go get more practice in it. And
absolutely,
maybe help the weekly assignments go a little smoother.
Absolutely. So. And the weekly assignments will build on this. We never really talk about creating tables, but the ERD does it. Creating tables is not that difficult. It's just create table and the columns and the data types and you're done, right? But when you get to the writing of the queries, that's where it gets interesting. But absolutely, yeah, this is going to like the 100 class and this class are fairly similar in structure. I just try to get more bang. I didn't design the final project, but I'm the one who said we should do it. So they gave it to me. So I've had to fix it a couple of times, but I think it's good right now. I think this is solid. All these resources here will help you in doing this. Okay, just read and watch these. Okay, but you're absolutely right. The more you work with code, the more you type things, the more you figure things out, the more you bang your head against the wall wondering why this doesn't work, and you see that you're missing a comma. It actually helps.
Yeah, it's the same in the front end.
Oh yeah.
90% of the time, it's some stupid syntax error.
Yep. I will tell you that one of my sad claims to fame is I was one of the first 200 C# certified people in the world. Which
That's a pretty cool. That's a cool claim to fame.
Yeah, but I don't use it anymore, so it's not that great. But and I taught it I was like one of the first trained instructors in it, so I know it pretty well. And I know how horrible my kryptonite in developing are quotes and parentheses. Because if you're one, especially in SQL, if you're one parenthesis off, it could take you hours to find it. And why the present? I have rewritten queries rather than trying to figure out where a parenthesis is missing, and it always ends up taking less time.
Okay, I have a couple questions.
Sure, hit me.
So about the final. Oh yeah, let him go first.
I just have to bow out.
That's right. Sure.
I'm sorry. I am loving this conversation.
Okay.
But I got another form I got to get to.
Okay. Bye.
I'll see you.
Bye.
Okay.
Okay. So as far as the final project goes, so I see like the overarching like what we need to do, but you said like the paper. You didn't really talk about the papers. You said you were going to talk about the papers.
Oh, okay. So if you do the final exam, if you do the final project, your papers come more of a journal on how you're doing on the project.
But everybody has to write the papers no matter what?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So if you do the final, so it's a different thing. And the reason why the papers exist, it has to do with standards and accreditation and all this other stuff.
Like our weekly papers.
Yeah, your weekly. Yeah. So if you choose to do the project, like let's say you say I'm going to do this project starting this week. So instead of writing your normal paper, what's this week's paper? Let's see. You have a profitable second week at your new company. You now in SQL, blah blah blah. Yeah. Your boss would like to be able to compare, contrast, whatever this is. Okay. Compare and contrast the use of equality comparisons, inequality comparisons, range comparisons. You should return a report with a 3 to 5 paragraph report that clearly explains what you learned about the various comparison operators in the where clause. This paper should qualify what you're learning by experimenting with technology. Okay, so if you are not doing the project, your paper this week is how do I use a where clause and all the different ways to do it. If you are doing the project this week, your paper is this is how I decided on the project I was doing. And then next week is here's the process I have with creating the tables. It becomes a journal entry or a letter to me to let me know how you're doing with the development of the project, so I can reach out to you and answer your questions and we can have conversations on it. So yeah, if you do the project, your papers from this point on become a journal entry on how you're doing on the project. If you don't do the project, it continues to be what it is.
Okay, and technically if someone gets like 6 weeks into the project and then they're like, man, this is way hard, I'm just going to take the test, they can just switch back to regular papers and do that. Yeah.
You could totally do the project, submit it, don't like the grade, and go take the exam to see what you got better on.
Okay, cool. I have more questions, but it's not on the final project.
Okay, I think we're done with the final project. So hit me with your questions.
Okay. So quizzes.
Yes.
I am having some struggles with these quizzes. I don't know if you still want this in the recording. That's fine if you do.
That's fine. Everyone complains about the quizzes. Go ahead.
Okay. And here's why. Because literally it's like, I feel like I'm presented with these situations where it's definitely not in the slides and it's not obviously in the textbook. And I'm like, not the test. I don't mind the testing quizzes. I like those where you do it on the MySQL and you have to figure out how to do that. That's fine. It's like the ones that are pulled from like a 50, like here's 10 questions pulled from a a bunch of other questions. I feel like they're trick questions and I don't know how to answer them.
Some of them absolutely are. So here's what I can tell you about the quizzes. Over here, this is the week 3 reading assignments. You've got the book assignment. You've got chapter 4 and chapter 9 of the book, the what you're supposed to read. Here's your PowerPoint size, but you've also got these. The quiz questions can come from those as well.
Okay, but let's talk about even like last week's quiz.
Sure, let's look it up.
I don't know if I can look at them or whatever, but it seriously was like, there was a couple things where I was like, wait, is it exactly that? I don't know. Is it that?
Alright,
What is
let's look
that? You know what I mean? Like I
at,
didn't know how to find the answer.
Okay, so let me preview this here.
You can even pull up my quiz. I got it only like 20.
Okay,
Okay.
let's see. So let me know if you get to when you get to a question you had a question about. Oh, let me just pull up your quiz. Hang on, let me stop sharing, and I'll pull. Are you okay if I pull up your quiz while recording? Let me pause recording while I pull up your
I
quiz.
don't really care. I don't care. You do whatever you want. Okay.
So we're gonna go back to what you were saying. Just saying now. Welcome
Okay,
back. We've
I'll-
been paused for a while.
I will hop off in just a second anyways, because you're almost done with time. But I was thinking about doing the project and I was thinking about doing like a one size fits all planning app so I can put in like goals from school and like grocery lists and like to-dos, you know, take kids here and like things like that.
So I think that's a good app. What I would do for the purpose of the project is pick one aspect of it, because a shopping list and a kid's schedule don't mix together. It'd be different compartments of the same app.
I'd
So
have
like
too many tables.
Well, you'd have too many tables, but it's also the tables wouldn't mesh together at all. Because like, let's say
Okay.
you're making a shopping list, and you're just doing a shopping list application, right? Like what you're gonna buy, where you need to buy it from, price comparisons, because you can get APIs from every supermarket that you can download their prices from and do price
Cool.
comparisons. So these can take you down some pretty cool rabbit holes. But I would say, like, I think a kids scheduling app would be really kind of cool, and that's like one component of the larger app, and you can really get down with like kid, where the thing is, how long, the schedule, recurring, blah 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 blah. So yeah, so I pick one aspect of it and then go from there.
Okay, awesome.
Because I think anything if you do something beyond that, you're looking like a multi. It's like, think of it like the Microsoft suite of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Project. They're 4 completely different things and require 4 different developers to do it. So, okay.
Cool. Well,
All
that's
right.
all my questions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll talk to you later.
Yep.
All right. Now it's just you and me. So we're almost out of time here for the hour. I did a lot of talking about the where clauses last week, and that's really what this week is about, just the where clauses, how to use them. Make sure you read all of these here. All the answers to your quizzes are in here, okay? Make sure you read all these, how the where clauses work. If you have any specific questions about any of these functions, please hit a comment here and I will reply with some code that will give you what you need. But let me reiterate. So start focusing on whether you want to do a project or not. See if you want to do a project or not, how you want that to work. If you are, let me go back here, some project, this paper. If you are going to do a project as of this week, your weekly papers become more about how you're doing on your project rather than what the question is being asked. If you're going to do the final exam, this is what your paper this week is about, how where clauses work and various comparisons using in like operators like in, range comparisons and things like that. Okay. I think that covers what I want to talk about. Really this week is the final project week. I don't really get into the where clauses very much. Next week, I'll be back to code. I'll have some code demo for you about what's going on next week. Please remember to contact me if you have any questions, any concerns, any problems in getting things done, so I can help you. It's my job here to help you. Other than that, have a great week. Enjoy conference this weekend. And I'll talk to you soon.